You are not improving at chess because you are thinking about the wrong things during your game. I will demonstrate a game here with my Rating Climb account to teach you what I think about during my games, so you can use this in your own games as well. So first of all, for the opening, I will be playing pawn to d4 here. They play pawn to d5, and I will just develop normally. And one of the biggest mistakes that most low-rated players make is that they think that opening theory actually matters for them. But honestly, just playing solid moves is most important. I also recommend, if you play an opening, to pick something that is very solid. For example, what I am playing here is the Pegasus system. That is my own opening system, which I think is great if you want something very simple with low theory. But most beginners make the mistake of trying to go for some very high theory opening. They are playing with the knight c6, which is usually a little bit of a strange variation, but it is fine. We just develop pieces and we castle. Nothing spectacular, basically. Now we are in a middle game that honestly I don't know super well, because this specific position, I don't think I have ever had this. Of course, I always recommend that you play the same opening every single time. Not that you memorize the theory specifically, but that you play the same opening so you get used to the same IDs. And that is why I play this opening always, the Pegasus system. So I know some of the plans here, even though I never have to go really deep when it comes down to theory. So that is a very important thing about openings, first of all, that you try to play something very solid, very safe. Don't try to go crazy and memorize some gambit or trap line. That doesn't really work. You want to play something solid. My opponent is already making some mistakes here. This shouldn't be right. This is just strange, moving the knight twice in the opening here. I don't really know what's going on, but we are just going to continue. I am going to use my e-pawn, d-pawn, and c-pawn, and those are usually the most important pawns if you want to start some type of plan in the middle game. And he is really going all out with the crazy moves, I have to say. He is spinning this knight to the queen, also attacking this. I think his goal is to try to double up, but he is also forgetting about his own defense, basically. And I think that is where he will be in trouble. Because if we play queen a4, we have double pressure on this knight already. And I don't think that is looking too great for him. I think that might also lead to some trouble. Double pressure here. And most of your opponents, if you just play normal moves, they will eventually be the ones to start going a little bit crazy. Like my opponent is doing here, moving the knight twice, moving the bishop twice. He is basically breaking all of the opening rules. And I think we now have knight to e5, putting pressure on that bishop as well. I think that might be the next plan. Or maybe we just take this pawn, because actually this pawn was defended by the queen and it is now no longer defended. So we already got ourselves a free pawn with an attack on this knight. Plus, this knight is no longer protected. So you will see that if you just stick to normal opening principles, it is way easier to win than if you were to try to memorize something, because your opponents will just destroy themselves. I do think it would be nice if we could capture here, but it probably doesn't work because he always gets out with a check. So we do have to recapture here, I think, with the bishop. But the game is not lost, of course. He just made a couple of bad moves and now he is in a position where he is going to lose a pawn, as he did. But that should already be enough to defeat your opponent. So that's my biggest advice for the opening. Play something solid and most of your opponents will just go crazy and make big mistakes. I am thinking, what is the best plan here? I could potentially play knight here, but I don't think there is ever any real benefit. We won't be winning something, I think. I don't think we will be winning something. So it's probably better to just think about normal development. So I will just be developing this. Rook helps by attacking these two squares on the c file. So that is what I am thinking about. This again is a little bit of a strange move. They are not really thinking about their play because they are allowing me to go in with a check and also have a counter attack against this. So again, my opponent is self-destructing, which is very often the case if you just play normal sensible moves. That is a free pawn. We always have to be careful in those situations that we don't trap our own queen. But here we are never going to be trapped, especially not because we have this rook participation and we basically have two pieces working together against the c7 pawn. Things are looking a little bit crazy here. I honestly don't know what all this madness is. I think we could maybe go here and try to trap the queen. That could be something. But he can, of course, always take, relieve some pressure, but I think it's fine anyways. I could also just grab an extra free pawn. But I'm wondering if there is something more than a free pawn which I could grab here. I think I will play this. Because if you have a good move that also sets up your opponent for potential failure, that is usually a very good plan. This is a little bit of a trap, you could say, but it's not a bad trap. It is just a good developing move. If he exchanges, which he just does, he is improving our position. 2 pawns in the center, taking away all of these squares. And if he was a little bit careless, then I would have had a position where I could just win even more material. I will give this check, which he probably has to block with the queen, so that I can trade. Because the moment that you are up material, your biggest priority should be to trade pieces. He is being a little bit smart and not giving us the extra trade, but it's not really going to matter. His position will collapse anyways. So the question is, what are we going to do here? What is our next plan? This pawn is under attack, so we are up 2 pawns. We just need to trade down into a winning endgame now. How can we do that? How can we do that? I think we have to guard this. So probably a move like bishop here makes sense. I could also have played f4, but I don't like moving my f-pawn and potentially giving him a counter-attack in the far future. I also don't like that my rook and queen are no longer connected. But this move seems to me like it solves a bunch of problems, protects one of our weaknesses here and also in the center. So finishing out a game like this, the most important thing is to make sure that they don't have any counterplay. So we don't want to suddenly have our king in trouble. He is, of course, going for the counterplay immediately. So that is something we have to be careful about. Other than that, we just have to try to trade pieces. I will play this, activate a rook, also giving my king a little bit of air to run if it's ever necessary. And it would be nice if I could push a pawn somewhere and open up something, but I don't really see what. Maybe this. Because we are proposing a trade of the bishops and also attacking that pawn. Maybe that was even a move I could have played earlier, but it's also not important to play the sharpest moves all the time, especially in a position like this where you are winning anyways. I will play this. It's an in-between move. It is also a check. Because I also have this move, which is also a check. And I'm just improving my position a little bit, and then I can always take this back later. The question is, do we take with the rook or the pawn? I don't think it matters too much. I will take with the rook. So at least these two are still connected. Otherwise I have one lonely pawn here, which doesn't have any buddies. So yeah, again, I think we are playing a great game. The next goal is just to trade a little bit more pieces. So I am going to give a check and also double up on the c file so we can trade. Yes, again, always looking for the counterplay, making sure that we don't blunder anything. For example, we now have a weak pawn here, but it's going to be quite a while before he ever gets to attack us. I don't think that move really does anything. Let's give this check. Also attack the pawn. But black is in so much trouble. Basically what happened in this game is what happens in most games, honestly, and that is that your opponent will self-destruct at some point. And here he also just completely self-destructed, gave away some free pawns, ruined his own king safety. So this should be winnable, but still you have to force the win. They won't just roll over and die. You still need to fight. I think he has this move rook d6, which looks like it shouldn't work, but I think it's a funny move because then he's blocking the diagonal for the queen as well. So he is going for the counterplay, but I was already prepared. We now have this, which is the most beautiful pawn chain, all the pawns connected. We do have one very big weakness, which is this diagonal, but I don't think he will get there anytime soon because this square is protected. These squares are untouchable, and this square I don't think he will ever get the queen there. But it's important to think about things like that when you are creating weaknesses, to already think, how can I potentially uh, protect myself? And now we just trade. We take the rook. We are just going to trade. I could have also taken with the queen, but I enjoy this variation because we have double pressure against this. The rook is also hanging since the pawn is pinned. So everything looks quite amazing, and I think we even have this nasty move, pawn here. If he takes with the queen, take, loses a rook. If he takes with the pawn, loses a rook with check, and then also a checkmate on the next move. So I think this is a funny move. We still have to be careful, as I said, about this diagonal. It is opening up a little bit. I'm always keeping an eye on it, but nothing is going to happen right now. I think we are just going to win this. But for example, if I ever move my rook here, I have to take into account that we might be running into an insane amount of checks. But with the king hiding in the corner, I think we always have a little bit of a safe move that we can pass the turn back to the opponent. But that is also a very important skill, this defense that I am showing here, as well as trying to simplify the endgame. Because many beginners, they know how to spot an opportunity, win some material, but then they just blunder back the game, and it's basically 3 blunders by white, 3 blunders by black, a bunch of mistakes in between. But your goal should be to have your opponent blunder first, to punish it, and to then play super carefully so you don't blunder back. A lot of things are going on here. I think, honestly, even taking here might be the best approach because we are threatening checkmate. We are allowing him to give that one check that I talked about, but we hide in the corner. And there's nothing. Plus, this pawn is also protected. So I think that might be the plan. If you are uncertain about a strategy like that, I also think that taking here could be a plan. Because we basically threaten to make an extra queen. But I think I will go for this rook. So he has this one check, but we hide in the corner, and I think then everything is fine. But it's important to calculate because you don't want to suddenly be surprised by a move like queen b6 when you don't have that much time left. I think taking with the pawn also worked, but it was more complex and it might be sharper, but if it can lead to a mistake, I usually choose the less sharp line. Sometimes I get comments, people saying, yeah, you missed an easier checkmate, but it's always easier when you're watching the video than when you are playing it live, trying to explain your thoughts with the clock ticking down. Then I would always say, if you are the one playing the game, it's best to take the easiest approach. And just make sure you can't blunder. Okay, but now we are getting a very beautiful endgame. I hope you see what we can do. We can basically take, force a queen trade, and we would also be able to just promote and make a new queen.